Hi, I'm Swain Johnston. I'm Strategic Projects Director at Orkney Islands Council, and welcome to this video presentation on Orkney's community wind farm project, Ferry. This is part of the pre-application consultation process in advance of submission of a planning application for the project. So first of all, if I could start with a sincere apology that we can't be there with you in person. We had hoped that we might be able to make arrangements to hold a public drop-in session, and we're hugely disappointed that we can't come out and talk to folk face-to-face about the latest plans. I think given the current situation, I'm sure you can understand why it wouldn't be possible or sensible for us to do so at the moment. The Scottish Government has, however, introduced emergency legislation which allows pre-application consultation to take place without a physical public event, recognising the economic need to keep the planning system functioning and also the uncertainty around when restrictions may or may not be lifted. So that is particularly important for this project, given the tight deadline that we've been given if we want to meet the needs case conditions as set out by Ofgem to secure a new electricity interconnector for Orkney. So really, if we don't keep moving forward towards a planning application with this project now, we significantly risk wasting the resources that have been put into the project to date. So again, whilst we're really disappointed that we can't be there in person, and obviously acknowledging the limitations of the current situation, we have put considerable effort into designing a consultation which we hope can reach as many folk as possible and give everybody the opportunity to understand the proposals and to make your opinions heard. So what we're doing includes obviously making this video presentation of the project proposals available to watch on demand. We're making project information and feedback sheets available online and by email or by post. And we're answering questions and taking comments via any of those channels as well. We're offering you one-to-one discussions on the phone or via video calls where we can talk through the proposals and any questions that you might have and also take feedback as well. And we will be holding a live and interactive web-based event where people can hear from the project team and ask questions. So all of the details for that will be published in the local press, on social media, and be available on the project pre-application consultation webpage. Before we go further, then a quick reminder that the purpose of this pre-application consultation is for you, the community, to be better informed about development proposals and to have an opportunity to contribute your views to us as developer before a formal planning application is submitted to the planning authority. So in other words, this is your chance to let us know what you think and for us to take account of that before a planning application is submitted. When the planning application is then submitted, you'll have another opportunity to make formal representations directly to the planning authority. So without further ado then, we'll talk you through the project now. In this video, as well as hearing from me, you're also going to hear from David Hannon, who's the Council's project manager for the Ferry project, and also from Jo Phillips, who's a landscape architect, and she's going to talk you through some of the visualisations that we've pulled together of the latest design of the project. So whilst the purpose of this presentation is to discuss the Ferry project, I think it is first of all important to consider the big picture of where this project fits within the wider proposals in Orkney. I appreciate that anyone who's been to one of our events before may already be familiar with some of this material, but I hope you don't mind me covering some of the details again here. Orkney's community wind farm project includes 3 potential wind farm sites, one at Quantinus in St Ola, one on Hoy on the area around Kierfea, and of course one on Ferry in the North Isles. You can see where each of these projects is located on the map, highlighted with a red mark. You'll notice that the map also displays several other potential wind farm sites that are being investigated by private developers, and also the Finstown substation, where it's likely any new project will have to connect back to. So in terms of the council projects, at this stage of the design, each site has a potential capacity for 6 turbines at approximately 150 metre to tip height, and a generating capacity of 28 megawatts on each site. The notable thing here is the size of the turbines, which are larger than any on Orkney. And to give you a frame of comparison, they're more than twice the height of the community turbines on Eday or Westray, which have a tip height of 67 metres, and also taller than the SSE turbines on Sandy, which I think are at 105 metres to tip. There are several goals that we're trying to achieve through this project. First of all, with the aim of generating income from publicly owned wind farm projects to support services in the local community, and of course deliver community benefit. Together with other developers, we also want to support the needs case for a new interconnector for Orkney, which we feel would open up wider economic benefits via further opportunities within Orkney's energy industry. And we also want to make sure that if we're going to have a new cable, as much of the benefits as possible stick within Orkney, and the best way of doing that is to have local ownership with benefits, which benefits everybody and not just the shareholders. So we'll go on to talk about the benefits a little bit more in the next couple of slides. One of the key aims of the project is to generate additional income and to essentially use that money to deliver community benefit in various ways. As a council, we are already facing significant issues around continually reducing budgets, coupled with increasing demand for public services. And additional income from Orkney's community wind farm project could make a big difference to that picture and could be a really important way of positively impacting on people's lives in Orkney. The issue of community benefit has been raised frequently with the project team at previous public events. And helpfully, in September last year, the council agreed on some guiding principles for community benefit from the project, which helps to clarify the aims. So some of those guiding principles are that the key purpose of Orkney's community wind farm project is to generate profit to be used for the benefit of the people of Orkney. That this will be done via a community fund to be used in the interests of Orkney and its inhabitants. That the project will be financed in such a way that we can achieve profit which can be used for community benefit as soon as reasonably practicable. That it won't be possible for private individuals to take a shareholding in any project. And that as communities located closest to projects will be impacted most by developments, that these communities should get a location-specific community benefit payment. Now, the exact way in which that location-specific community benefit payment will be delivered has not yet been decided, and we would really like your views on how you think it should be done. And in order to do that, we will be running a separate and specific public consultation exercise on that in due course. On top of the direct financial benefits to the community, the project will enable the council to join other local developers in meeting the requirements for securing a new interconnector for Orkney. As you may be aware, there is little to no spare capacity on the grid in Orkney at present, and it's really difficult for any new energy project trying to develop. We think that a new cable will bring significant economic benefit and substantially support the renewable energy industry in Orkney. Ofgem has now conditionally approved proposals from SSEN to build a 220 megawatt interconnector linking Orkney with the Scottish mainland. Approval is dependent on at least 135 megawatts of new wind farm projects in Orkney, either being awarded a contract for difference or being judged likely to be developed by December 2021. Likely to be developed has been defined as being a project that can demonstrate that it's financially viable, that has signed a relevant grid connection agreement, and that has planning permission in place. The wider economic development of a new cable to Orkney could be highly significant, but what's critical in maximising that benefit is making sure that we have a substantial proportion of local ownership of projects connecting to the cable. And that's something which is really critical in helping make sure that jobs and income remain in the county. And that's really a key driver behind Orkney's community wind farm project. Put simply, if we don't do this, it's possible that somebody else will, and that a lot of the benefit would then leave Orkney. So separate to this, climate change and the imperative to reduce carbon emissions is another important driver for this project, which could go a long way to helping to create a carbon neutral future for our islands. As you may or may not be aware, Orkney has already produced more than 100% of its electricity needs from renewable energy since 2014, but we still produce a lot of carbon, particularly in transport and in heating, and there's a lot more that we can and need to do to decarbonise. To give some context on this issue, the Office of National Statistics estimates Orkney's carbon emissions at 192,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. And we think that each of our projects, if built, could offset around 40,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide each year. So for the 3 projects, that would be 120,000 tonnes per year. So we really are talking about projects that could make a significant difference to Orkney's net carbon footprint. Now, at public events, we regularly get asked about why we have selected the 3 sites that we have, and indeed why we haven't selected other potential sites. So this slide really is just to demonstrate that we have been through a rigorous process in selecting sites that we feel of our sufficient scale to be economically viable and also have a reasonable chance of gaining consent. So what we've done on the map that you can see in front of you is we've drawn a pink 700 metre buffer around all residential properties in Orkney as areas likely to be unsuitable for development because of proximity of houses. And We've also, in the hatched areas, superimposed all of the internationally designated areas in Orkney, where it would be highly unlikely that consent could be achieved. So that leaves a number of white patches to investigate further, and we've essentially looked at any white patch of sufficient scale for a project and ruled it in or out for any number of reasons. And we've then whittled down our list to what we see as our 3 best options. The overall scale here is also a really important driver as well. We started off with proposals for a 100 megawatt project on Hoy, which has since reduced to a project of 28 megawatts. And so we've picked up other sites to take us back up to a level of megawatts, which we think will help us make a meaningful contribution towards the needs case and essentially to secure a new cable for Orkney. Okay, I'll now hand over to my colleague David Hannon, who's going to talk you through the latest project proposals for Ferry.
Hi, I'm David Hannon, the Strategic Project Manager for Orkney Islands Council. Now that we have covered the wider project aspects, I'd like to share a bit more of the detail around the site on Ferry, as there has been significant progress in the design since our last public event. I will begin by giving you an idea of what will be included on the site should development proceed. The map on this slide shows our site on the island of Ferry. You can see the 6 turbines locations labelled T1 to T6, the roads between each turbine, and the other permanent and temporary infrastructure. The permanent components that will be on site for the lifespan of the project are the 6 turbines, a hard standing at the base of each turbine for the construction and maintenance of the turbines, an on-site substation where the turbines will be connected to by underground cables, and a permanent met mast which will be used to optimise turbine performance. At the southeast of the island, where the existing slip is located, is where we intend on having components and construction equipment delivered. I will cover this aspect in greater detail in the next slide. During the construction of the project, there will be some temporary infrastructure on site that will be removed once construction has been complete. This will include a compound for materials and machinery and a blade laydown area at the base of each turbine. As I mentioned earlier, the turbines will be connected to the on-site substation by underground cables. From this point, it is likely to connect to the Finstown grid supply point. The route and method for this connection are yet to be determined and will depend on several factors. It is too early in the design process to have any clarity on what options may be available. The grid connection element of this project will be subject to a separate planning application. Due to the relative remoteness of the site and the lack of adequate existing infrastructure, a lot of time and effort has gone into developing a practical solution for the delivery of personnel and components to the island. After going through several design iterations, a 2-stage delivery method was determined to be the most viable. Stage 1 is the refurbishment of the existing slip. Due to its current dilapidated state, it is not fit for purpose. Therefore, we propose to remove the current structure and replace it with a new extended slip, which could accommodate the type of vessels currently used in Orkney. All initial construction equipment for Stage 1 will arrive by landing craft, and a temporary construction compound will be sited just north of the slip. Due to the dimensions of turbine blades and the vessels required for delivery, another solution was required. For Stage 2, it was determined that a blunt end pier just north of the slip refurbishment was the best method. This would enable the crew to unload the turbine blades in a safe and straightforward manner. At present, we are planning to use materials sourced on Ferry and mainland Orkney for the construction of both the pier and the slip, and we look to batch concrete on site. Further details of the design process will be made available at a later date, as discussions between our engineers, the turbine manufacturers, and Marine Scotland are still in progress. There is quite a lot to consider when analysing the potential impact on the local area from a wind farm development. You can see some of these considerations listed on this slide. All these aspects are used in optimising the design, and producing the environmental impact assessment report. In the following slides, I will go into more detail as to how we have considered some of the key aspects in the design process. On the map, you can see the initial turbine locations, marked as red triangles, and the new turbine locations as black circles. As you will see, there has been a reduction from 8 turbines to 6, and that they have shifted slightly towards the centre of the island, moving away from the cairn to the north and away from the boundary to the natural heritage sites surrounding the island. The reduction in turbines has also enabled us to optimise the turbine spacing and reduce the proximity of the turbines to the local seal and bird population. An important element to any development, especially one located in a location as visually appealing as Orkney, is what will the visual impact of these large turbines be on our landscape? As part of the assessment, we have undertaken a landscape visual impact analysis, which is fed into the siting of turbines. As part of this presentation, you will have the opportunity to see photo montages, which gives a visual representation of how the turbines will be presented on the landscape. As wind farm developments can affect wildlife and birds both during construction and operation, the potential impacts have been a key component of the design process. The surveys as part of the analysis have influenced the turbine locations. To reduce the potential impact, turbines have been moved further away from the natural heritage sites. The construction programme will also be designed to be sympathetic to ecology and ornithology. With this in mind, we are proposing that no construction takes place from mid-September to mid-November during grey seal pupping season. Site surveys have identified heritage assets on and around Ferry. This has been fed into the design process, and all of the potential impacts we may have will be addressed within the EIA. At previous consultations, we have been asked about the noise impact of turbines this size at local homes. Initial analysis has indicated that due to the distance the closest home is to the site, the possible noise levels experienced will be minimal, if any. However, further background noise level studies are ongoing and will be reported within the EIA. During the construction period, a construction environmental management plan will be produced, which will minimise noise and set out agreed working hours. Other aspects that we have been considering include potential impacts to traffic. These are likely to be minimal due to Ferry being uninhabited and components potentially being delivered direct to site. Turbines interfering with communication links. To avoid this, we have been consulting with telecommunication operators to ensure turbine locations do not impact these links. Shadow flicker. Shadow flicker is the flickering effect that can occur when rotating wind turbine blades periodically cast shadows through windows of neighbouring properties. Due to the distance and location of the nearest home to the site, impact of shadow flicker is unlikely to cause any effect. We have covered the overview of the project and the details around the site on Ferry. Now I'd like to take a minute to tell you about the development process and where you can have your opinions heard. As you will see from the timeline here, we have selected our site and provided a scoping report to the local planning authorities. With the feedback from the planning authorities and multiple consultees, we proceeded to the next stage of this timeline, the environmental impact assessment, which is the analysis of all the impacts our project may have on the local area. This includes site surveys, desktop studies, and multiple expert consultations, as we have outlined in this presentation. This process helps us to determine the best design for all parties involved. It is at this stage you can let us know as developers what your thoughts on the project are. This can be done in several methods, as specified on the webpage. And if you have any queries, feel free to contact a member of the Strategic Projects team. The next stage of the process is the submission of the planning application, which for the Ferry site is likely to be at the beginning of next year. Once the local planning authority has validated the application, all relevant documentation will be made available to the public. This is when you can submit your letters of support or objection to Orkney Islands Council Planning Department, or to the Scottish Government if they decide to handle the application. The local planning authority or the Scottish Government will then determine if the project is to be approved.
My name is Jo Phillips, and I'm the landscape architect responsible for the landscape and visual impact assessment for Orkney's Community Wind Farm project. In order to assess the potential visual effects of the proposed wind farm on Ferry, we have selected 11 viewpoints to represent the views of residents, road users, ferry passengers and walkers in both the local and the wider area. 6 of the 11 viewpoints are presented here as part of this online public consultation. Each slide presents a photo montage to represent how the views will be changed by the proposed wind farm on Ferry. The first viewpoint is taken from the chambered cairn to the south of Vinquoy Hill on Eday. It has been selected to represent the views of locals and visitors walking on the island's heritage trail. From this footpath, views extend in all directions, and the surrounding islands of Westray to the northwest, Rousay to the southwest, and Sandy to the east are clearly visible. The view looks southwest towards the small island of Ferry, which is one of the closest islands in the view. Ferry is where the wind farm would be located. The closest turbine would be just under 3 kilometres from this viewpoint. The photo montage shows that all 6 turbines would be seen, set along the landform of the island and separated from Eday by the Sound of Ferry. The second viewpoint is located at Mussetter Sands on Eday. This is a broad, sandy beach backed by high dunes and enclosed by rocky headlands. The beach is orientated northwest, such that it affords open views across First Nest Bay to the island of Ferry, with Westray visible in the distance beyond. This is a popular location for locals and visitors to walk, and owing to the lack of development, retains some sense of peace and tranquility. The photo montage shows that all 6 turbines would be clearly visible, seen set on the island of Ferry. The closest turbine would be just over 3 kilometres from this viewpoint, and the turbines would form a new focus in views from the beach. The third viewpoint is located on the ferry between Kirkwall and Westray at a point approximately 2 kilometres southwest of Ferry. It has been selected to represent the views of ferry passengers travelling between mainland Orkney and the Northern Isles. Views from the ferry are open and expansive, extending across Westray Firth to take in the surrounding islands. The photo montage shows that all 6 turbines would be clearly visible, seen set on the small island of Ferry. With the closest turbine approximately 2 kilometres from the viewpoint, the proposed turbines would form a focal feature in views from passing ferries. The fourth viewpoint is located at Rapness on Westray, set on the southern coastal edge near the ferry pier. This coastline is enclosed by rocky headlands to the west and east, such that views are channelled southeast across Rapness Sound to the island of Ferry, with the island of Eday seen behind. While this coastline is rural in character, the presence and activity of the ferry terminal presents also a more developed character. The photo montage shows that all 6 turbines would be visible, seen set on the small island of Ferry, separated from Westray by the Rapness Sound. The closest turbine would be approximately 3.6 kilometres from this viewpoint, and the turbines would form a new focus in views from this coastal edge. The fifth viewpoint is located on the coastal edge at Ness of Vinquoy on the south side of Westray. The Ness of Vinquoy forms the rocky headland on the southern side of the Bay of Vinquoy. This is a rural landscape with farmland extending up to the coastal edge and small-scale development set in the hinterland. 3 operational turbines are located in the landscape to the north. The viewpoint is representative of the views of local residents and walkers. The view looks southeast over Westray Firth. The photomontage shows that all 6 of the turbines would be visible, scenes set behind the southwest peninsula of Westray and with Eday in the background. The closest turbine is approximately 9 kilometres from the viewpoint, and despite the distance, the turbines would appear as tall vertical structures. The 6th viewpoint is located on Kierfea Hill in the northeast corner of Rousay. At 235 metres, this is the highest hill on Rousay, and from the top, expansive views open up in all directions. Views extend over the moorland interior of the island, but also north to Westray, east to Eglesay and Eday, and northeast to Ferry. The viewpoint has been selected to represent the views of walkers on Kierfea Hill, but also residents and road users in this northeastern part of the island. The closest turbine would be just over 11 kilometres from this viewpoint, and the turbines would form a new focus in views from the hill. The photomontage shows that all 6 turbines would be seen set along the low-lying island of Ferry, with the 5 Spurness wind farm turbines visible on Sandy in the background.
Hopefully this presentation has given you some idea of what's being proposed on Ferry, and the reasons why we're looking at bringing the project forward, and also some of the important factors that have been taken into consideration when designing the project. This pre-application consultation stage is a really important part of the planning process, and we'd very much encourage you to make your views known to us over the coming weeks, up until Monday the 30th of November at 12 noon. If you would like to discuss the project with us, then please contact our project officer, Kirsty Granwater, in the first instance. You can do that by phone on 07818 508 323, or by email on kirsty.granwater@orkney.gov.uk. She can explain the options available to you and set up an opportunity for you to have a chat with the project team. You can also find out more about the project, of course, on the project website at www.orkney.gov.uk/ferry pack. Thank you very much for listening.